right. So excited to welcome back Eliza Kingsford, licensed psychotherapist, mind body practitioner, and behavior change specialist. We are in part two of a three-part series, and we're purposefully doing this to allow our listeners, this community, to settle in. We've got a lot of wisdom, thoughts, nuggets coming at you. And the hope is that you're showing up. Would love you to ultimately be showing up with your pen and paper and bringing your own examples. And I feel the need to say this. This is free therapy, people. This is amazing that we get Eliza right now. So please take advantage of it. I can see us listening through even 3 to 4 times before, it all starts to really sink in. It's a little deep. But Eliza likes to ask, are you ready to finally have a peaceful, easy relationship with food without having to give up your weight loss goals? And I think for a lot of us, this feels very pie in the sky. It's very rainbows and unicorns. We can have a peaceful, easy relationship with food and have weight loss. What?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't even go together, right? And so we're spoiled in the fact that Eliza is giving us almost this glimpse of this book that's been brewing or parts of this series. Part one was habitual patterns and emotion regulation. And now we're going to take this next deep dive into more of these thought patterns, mindset shifts. If you've ever find yourself saying, I've tried everything and nothing works, that Eliza actually thinks it's a sign that something else needs addressed. So I'm gonna shush here in a minute and hand the mic over to Eliza so you can go through again a little summary of what we hit on last week, and then we're gonna take 2 more of those bullet points today, and then in part 3 we'll get to hear what we get to look forward to. So just thank you so much for your time and coming back. Welcome, Eliza.
Yes. Oh gosh, thank you. I thank you for having me. I think, as a side note, it's so fun to have these conversations where you and we share so many common thoughts and ideas about this and the way we work with people is so similar. And so anyways, it's just fun to be able to come on and having honest and easy flowing conversation. And as you were talking about the book that's brewing and saying, are we spoiling anything? And I think the answer is no. Like it's I get so excited to be able to bring this work to the world, and I'm grateful for your connection to do that. So so last week we talked about habitual patterns and emotion regulation. And we chuckled and you and I connected afterwards a little bit that, there's so much to give here. Like you said, call what you want, free therapy, but I want people to understand the foundation of what happens for people when they stay stuck in change. And what I mean by that is people will say, keep trying, nothing works for me. I've tried everything, nothing works for me. I keep doing these things, even though I know they're not good for me. And in any area of our lives, not just with food and body, right? So relationship patterns, career patterns, parenting, what fill in the blank, right? So what we usually end up saying is, I know better, but I'm not doing better. Why is it so hard to change? And as you've heard me say, that was sort of that's been the burning question in my career for graduate school and then, postgraduate trainings and further deep dives into different parts of education has led me to what I call a change model, right? So if we have struggled changing, well, then what is the model for change? And that's really what we're talking about is a change model, the step-by-step model for how, at least in my opinion, over 20 years in this career, how that happens, how we achieve that. And not only is it sustainable and ideally permanent, but also if you're struggling at any point, being able to go kind of back down the change model and understand where we go at it again or differently or try something different. So it's sort of this blueprint for being able to change and then also being able to reverse engineer it and understand where we're getting stuck. So that's the big picture of what we're talking about. So it's no small thing, right?
Well, I have a quick question in there too. Could somebody also think of this as self-sabotage? Like I hear clients say that a lot. Why am I self-sabotaging myself? Is that are we talking about the same thing? I know what to do. I just need to do it. Or why am I keep sabotaging the behaviors that I want to change, but I'm not?
Yeah. Yes. And I actually love that you brought up self-sabotage because it's a perfect segue into the very first piece of the change model, we call it self-sabotage, but actually from the nervous system perspective, it's actually called adaptive survival strategies. In other words, if we were to look at these things that we have considered self-sabotage from a different lens and ask a different question, for example, instead of saying, why do I keep doing this? I keep sabotaging myself. We might want to ask something like, why does my body think this is protective? Why was that adaptive for me at some point for some reason? Now, I'll give a little context to that. But from a nervous system perspective, what we know is that everything that we do, even though it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us sometimes cognitively, everything that we do originated out of a need for survival strategy. It was adaptive in some way. The reason why we started doing it, or the reason why it became a pattern, started from a place of protection, safety. It was good for us in whatever moment it was for some reason. Now, did it turn into something that was habitual, like we talked about last week? Did it develop into something that's hard to change? Yes, yes, yes. But we have the opportunity to look back on it and say, why might that have been adaptive for us at some time? And I'll throw this last piece out there and then I'll slow it down and talk about the nervous system. But when I say, why might that have been adaptive for us at some time, I don't mean that we necessarily need to go back and dig through our childhood and understand the patterns and understand what happened and understand all these things and get deep into the weeds of it. Not at all. But it does allow us a different lens that we can look through and say, instead of looking at it like I keep sabotaging myself, I could look at it from the perspective of, I needed this for some reason at some time. Do I need it anymore? Right. So it's kind of a lens shift in how we think about our patterns. Should I go into the nervous system? Is that
Yeah, I
where
think so. Yeah, we're taking deep dives. We're going big.
yes, we are. And as we talked about last week, and I told you, sometimes it's harder for me to do the high level overview of the deep dives because I want to give everybody everything. And it's a good challenge for me to try and make it, important, but also just stick to the high level, right? So
You are gifted in this area, and I keep telling you that. And thank you because we, as the common people over here, can hear you and understand. So thank you,
thank
and
you.
go there.
Okay, that gives me. All right, let's do this. So the very foundation of what I'm calling the change model is the nervous system. And the nervous system has become really popular in the last few years. You hear it everywhere. It's kind of a buzzword. People talk about the nervous system, but I don't think most people understand what it actually is or why it matters. We just hear things like, you should regulate your system or you should tone your vagus nerve. And it doesn't it doesn't land for people, right? What does that even mean? And we know it's good for us or people are talking about it, so maybe we should pay attention, but I think most people don't really know what that means. So to try and make it simple, I think what's most important for me to tell people is that everything we think and feel and say and do in every aspect of our lives originates in the nervous system. So by way of example, let's say I said, Lindsay, there is a black dog on the street, right? There's a black dog on the street. That's it. Neutral piece of information. There's a black dog on the street. What happens very quickly, it already happened for you, it already happened for me, is your nervous system. So the brain body connection, to put it scientifically, it's your brain and your spinal cord. And it's the bundle of nerves that are coming off of your brain and your spinal cord, your autonomic nervous system. None of that stuff really matters. What matters, I mean, it matters, but what matters for the listeners is without your conscious awareness, you created a picture of that black dog, what it means, how you feel about it, what kind of setting it's in. And I created a picture of that black dog, what it means, how I feel about it, what setting it's in, based on all of the information that we have collected in our nervous system over the years, with every experience, with every feeling, with every detail, right? That happens without our conscious awareness. And what I can guarantee is your picture of the black dog is not the same as my picture of the black dog. So I will fast forward and say, if your picture of the black dog was that you had a dog when you were a kid and it was black and you came home and it greeted you after school every day and you petted it, you might go up to that black dog and say, "Oh, can I pet you?" Right? And it would be this warm experience. That's based on the collection in your nervous system of all of those bits of information. And it happens just like that in a nanosecond, right? And your reaction to the black dog is immediate. And unless we had just broken it down like that, you wouldn't have even thought about it from that perspective, right? My experience of the black dog, if I maybe I got chased by a black dog from coming home from the school bus one day and it was right on my heels and it was nipping at me. So I see the black dog and I have a whole host, a whole cascade of different reactions to this black dog based on my experience. Now, the point here is all of those reactions originate in the nervous system, tell us whether we're okay or not, and then send messages to our brain to tell us what to do. So, first in the nervous system, we get all these cues and it decides, are we safe here or are we in danger? And then it sends us all these signals to the brain, which become thoughts. Okay, so I'll say that one more time. First, it starts in the nervous system, sends us all these cues of are we okay or are we not? Secondarily, it goes to the brain and says, I like black dog. I don't like black dog. So by the time it becomes a thought, what we call perception, by the time we perceive the dog as positive or negative, the nervous system has done all kinds of work inside first. And by the time it becomes perception, it has already adjusted all kinds of things first. So we think our thoughts and our feelings are the place we need to work, but those are secondary. Those are secondary. And this is like one of the biggest pieces of why people can't change. We've spent a lot of decades in like affirmations and power of positive thinking and change your thoughts, change your life, all that stuff. Well, those are secondary. And so if we don't address nervous system work first, and we keep staying stuck in these thought patterns, now you might have an insight as to why, right?
So interesting. Yes. And if we're not even willing to accept that or listen to that that's a thing, to your point of we've all heard nervous system or we all should breathe more, relax our nervous system, which I'm sure you're going to go into.
Right.
But it's really easy for people to be like, yeah. I hear you.
Yep.
Yes. And you're like, hang on, it's literally like the first step to you changing and getting sustainable change.
And I'll give another example. I'll start with kids, because if any of your listener have kids, everybody has experienced this, right? You've had a toddler or somewhere between the ages of 2 and 4, let's call it. And that toddler's nervous system picks up something in the environment that they're not a big fan of. And fast forward, you got a tantrum on your hands, right? And as an adult, you're thinking, what in the world? I just asked you to sit in your chair. This is, everything's fine, right? But something to the toddler, we don't know what it was because the toddler doesn't have the abilities yet to explain or describe or even understand what's going on for them. This happens all the time at bedtime. Anybody ever have a toddler who doesn't want to brush their teeth or get ready for bed? From a nervous system perspective, they're picking up on a whole lot of cues. They don't know how to describe it, don't know what to do with it. A toddler just reacts to their nervous system environment. We teach ourselves to not do that as adults, but toddlers just react to their environment. And so all of a sudden, you have this toddler in a tantrum. And what do parents do oftentimes? Well-meaning parents who are just trying to, create order in their household. Listen to me, calm down, pay attention to me, right? I'm trying to tell you, listen. That toddler cannot hear you. And when I say cannot, not because they're being obstinate, but this is where it gets interesting. The brain structures that are required for listening, for taking in information, for being able to respond in a meaningful way or what we call an appropriate way, those are all completely shut off. The nervous system is the control panel for what we have access to in our body. What I mean by that is when the nervous system is triggered into dysregulation, it shuts off access to many, many structures in the brain, and it starts to divert resources to other places. So the toddler has all the ability to flail and cry and make loud sounds and all those things, but no ability to take in what you're saying, right? No ability to hear that everything's okay or that, you're going to fix it or whatever it is. And that is controlled in the nervous system. So when we say to your toddler who's tantruming, listen to me, calm down, they can't. They're not trying to manipulate you or be obstinate. Try it someday, see how this feels. When your toddler is tantruming, to connect, do everything you can to connect, even if you're so mad, right? Like, even if the toddler has just done something that really is not okay, connect first, hold them, let them know that you hear them. From a nervous system perspective, bring them back to safety. When that child comes back to safety, you might still be sniffling. You've all seen the toddler who calms down. When the child is back to safety and regulation, then the parts of the brain can hear you, it can process information, and can respond to you in an appropriate way. Come back online. It's like a light switch. Come back online. Then you can talk about the things that you want to talk about, right? Okay, I know that was hard. It's bedtime, and bedtime can feel hard. Then you can go forward, right? So I realize that was a long-winded way of explaining this, but I think toddlers are a really good example of the way that the nervous system really is in charge. And this happens with adults too. When you get triggered by a partner or an email from your boss, the way that we want to respond in those moments are entirely different than when we respond when we're in safety. So dysregulation causes different thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Regulation allows different thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It is the foundation from which everything we think, feel, and do starts is in your nervous system first.
Okay. And so tell me if I'm jumping ahead too much, because I just want to I love that I get to just sit here and kind of process this as you're talking. That if we are in a constant, because things keep happening, you mentioned the email in the day, and that shoots us into a little bit of that
Yep.
whoa mode. And then a kid walks through the door and sends us in. Like, we can be kind of living at a constantly revved up nervous system. And if we don't bring that down, then our ability to change other areas in our life or to transform or create the sustainable change is not really possible till we learn how to regulate. Am I understanding that correctly?
You are understanding that entirely correctly. And oh man, there's so much I want to say to that piece, but you are understanding that entirely correctly, because from what I see, our humanity as a whole has been moving and continues to move. And part of it, from what I see, is in conjunction with sort of like the technology era, but has continued to move to this place, as you just described, as what I call, we call being chronically activated. So not system dominance is what it's called in my language, but chronically activated. So as you said, and you described it really well, you get an email from the boss and okay, that little dysregulation, but then your kid comes through the door and they're loud. Okay, a little dysregulation. And then your husband comes home and says, this bad thing happened to me, a little dysregulation, right? So it's building this sort of this chronic activation. And then we say, well, I'm supposed to have broccoli and chicken for dinner. That's what I said. I'm on this diet and I'm having broccoli and chicken for dinner. And your nervous system says, oh, I don't think so. Your nervous system says you have been running on activation all day long. I'm done. We can talk about this in a second, but I think of it in terms of your nervous system bank account. You are drained. You are in overdraft, right? And some of the brain structures that are involved when you're in overdraft are picking up these cues for certain types of food, a certain amount of food. There's all kinds of, that's a conversation for maybe part 7 of this. But when our nervous system is in overdraft, when it's chronically activated, when it's just done, right?
Mhm.
it triggers and signals us to have different behaviors. And so, even though you started the morning with the best of intentions and you're going to eat broccoli and chicken for dinner, which, by the way, doesn't sound good to you, and you're forcing yourself to eat it, and that feels bad, which, by the way, feels bad to the nervous system. All of a sudden, you're sitting down to eat, and your husband has brought home a pizza because he's had a hard day at work. And all you can think about is, give me some of that because you are finished, right? And then what happens? Then we blame ourselves, guilt and shame. It was self-sabotage. Why do I always do that? What's wrong with me? Why can't I get it together? We got to understand what's going on in these underlying mechanisms first. Um, because what I have found, especially what I found especially powerful, was that if people can start tracking their nervous system bank account and understanding where their balance is, they are, to go back to your first statement of having a more peaceful and easy relationship with food, as we track the nervous system bank account balance, that's where the peaceful, easy relationship comes in. Because when we put attention and intention behind putting deposits in our bank account balance, we have more access to brain structures. We have more access to better decision making. We have more access to nervous system regulation. And that's when food decisions become easier, more peaceful. We have the ability to make them even with intention, even if we decide, you know what, the chicken and broccoli would feel better to me tonight. It makes me feel more satiated and whatever, fill in the blank, lighter and more at ease. Fine. If you decide that's what you want, it's an easier, more accessible decision to make because you're starting more regulated. Let's put it that way.
Oh my goodness, this is so interesting to me because I think for so long I equate it more to energy, and you're giving me this like deeper layering of energy. And I actually have a personal example that's been a little bit of an aha for me lately. I feel like I've had this kind of PTSD from younger kid years of kids walking through the door, that transition period of out of school and then walking through the door and shutting
Mhm.
down work and blah, blah. Anyways, I've been taking, like, I would normally say habits get harder for me later in the day because I'm tired or I'm just
Mhm.
looking for me time. And I've started taking this half an hour to just read a really good book, 30 minutes
Mhm.
before to like do this new transition. And I think what's ultimately happening is I'm resetting nervous system, my
You
regulate,
are.
like I'm taking
Yes.
an, yeah, opportunity to chill
Yeah.
out for a minute. So it's interesting because that gives hope, at least for me, that I don't have to manage my energy as much because sometimes that is not as manageable for me as managing the nervous system, which might feel reverse, but
Yes. No, I mean, and I love that example. It's such a good example. Number one, because it's everyday life, It- anybody can input their example of what you just said. It's just life. It's not, there's nothing dramatic going on for you. It's nothing acute. It's life. It's transitioning and kids coming home, and it's just life, right? But if we don't understand it from the nervous system perspective, and what you said was so important, which is I don't have to worry about managing my energy because sometimes you can't, right?
yeah.
And this is the key about the nervous system work is that if we don't understand it from that perspective, we make the mistake of thinking, okay, I've got this. As long as the circumstances look like this, then I've got this. But
Yes.
what that sets up is if the circumstances change, if you don't have energy, if you don't have things all set, just so, it sets you up for going, oh, shoot, then I'm in trouble, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to
Mhm.
fail, or it's going to fall apart, or it's not going to feel good. But if you do have the awareness of the structures of the nervous system and know how to work with it, which, by the way, once we understand it, it's super simple to put deposits in your account, which I'll talk about in just a
I
second.
love that. Mhm.
Understanding it from that perspective allows us to take this big, deep breath and think, oh, okay, there is always something that I can do once I'm aware of my system and I know what my deposits are and I know what dysregulation looks like. In my world, we call it builds capacity and flexibility in the nervous system. Flexibility
Mm.
is so important because, as you so beautifully pointed out earlier, it changes all day, every day. You get the email, then you respond. You have a good thing, then you have a hard thing. When you have some space, then you don't have any space. It goes up and down all day long. That's completely normal. We want to be more flexible in our system so that it doesn't require us only being here to be okay. And then, heaven forbid, something should happen. I know it's a house of cards and it's all going to fall apart. Flexibility offers us the opportunity to think, I got whatever's coming my way, I got this. Doesn't mean it's always going to be good, but I know I have the capacity to manage it, right? So let me put things into a little bit more concrete examples. We have three main nervous system states. I'm going to breeze through this so quickly. There's some more nuance and details, but here's the important part. You've got connected, activated, and shut down. Those are not the technical terms, they're not the scientific terms, but I think most people can understand it from that perspective. Connected, I'm doing okay, life is good. Everybody has their own specific words, ways to describe when they know they're in the connected state. And we've got activated, which is what you've been talking about, right? Kids come through the door. Oh boy, I can feel my system start to mobilize some energy. That's exactly what is happening in the system. Oh gosh, I need to mobilize some energy to deal with the kids. This is stress. This is overwhelm. This is anxiety. Um, this is the sympathetic state. This is what most people know as the fight or flight. Sympathetic state, activation. And then we have the shutdown state, which is the technical term is dorsal vagal, but it's kind of under the covers. I can't take anything else in. Numb, dissociated. People who struggle with food oftentimes know this feeling. Numbness, zoning out, dissociation. I can't take any more. I'm a turtle in my shell type thing. So if we look at these three states, again, it's an oversimplification of them. We go back and forth through these three states all day long. Connected, getting activated into sympathetic, shut down, it's too much, right? The interesting part here, and you found it your way to it naturally, but I'll describe to you what's happening in your nervous system, is you notice you start to get activated when the kids come home and come through the door. Largely that might have something to do with, oh, am I quite done with work? And I got to shut that down. And what's still on my mind there? But then I need to take care of the kids. And so now that's on my mind. So here we are in an activated state. Let's call it a mild sympathetic state. And what you realize that helps you is before the kids come home to slow down and read a book, right? What you have done before the kids come home is put a little deposit in your nervous system bank account by bringing you back to this connected, regulated place, right? So that we don't go straight from the last call you had to the kids coming home, because that's activation. So you brought yourself back to a little bit more connected ventral, it's called ventral state. And now you have more capacity and flexibility in your nervous system for the kids to come home. Now, you were describing it as giving myself more energy. Semantics, same thing. What I call it is you put some deposit in your bank account there, nervous system bank account. I put a deposit in. So now I have more room before I get into this overdraft. Does that land for you?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. It's one of those, I feel like I also would call it a tool, in my tool belt. And now you're giving me this new way to view this, that it's not just a tool, it's like you're shifting. And what has been interesting is once I figured that out and time has like passed, kids are older, I've actually really been able to come out of that. Like at this point, I've just figured now it's almost just a treat. But
Yeah.
in the beginning, it was like the thing that needed to happen to make sure that the next thing didn't happen, that the glass of wine didn't happen, that the eating didn't
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
like, or else I'm seeking the me time, I'm going to call it, or I'm seeking the comeback down time from something that's not healthy for me.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up the wine. Man, there's two things I want to say of everything you just said. So I'm so glad you brought up the wine, because if you went straight from this important work that you're doing with clients, and then straight to the important work that you're doing as a mom, you get the kids coming home, really you're in this kind of activated state because it's a lot, right? Your nervous system hasn't gotten any regulation yet that day, or you haven't put a deposit in. By the time we get to after dinner and the kids go to bed, we have been activated all day or a good portion of the day. And if we don't know it from that perspective, we go, deserve a glass of wine, right? Like I want
Mhm.
to wind down and I deserve it. And this is the thing that we think the wine is the thing that we need in order to relax. When we know it from these sort of more mechanical perspectives of nervous system, what we really need is more regulation into our system, more ventral regulation coming back, putting more deposits in our bank account. So we have higher balance in our bank account, more regulate. Wine, we connected wine with that, but it wasn't the wine that created the good feeling. It was the fact that we were bringing ourselves back into regulation. And the reason why I'm so passionate about people understanding that is there's about 100 different ways that you can come back into regulation. You read a book for 30 minutes, brought you back into regulation. Some people go to the wine. It's not actually regulating you. You're just connecting it with relaxation, coming back to ventral, coming back to your connected state. There's about 100 different ways to do that, which is why when you mention the tools, I like people to understand the foundation because otherwise they can get too attached to a tool and they think if I don't read that book, if I don't have that wine, if I don't meditate, if I don't journal, if I don't fill in the blank, then I'm not going to feel okay. And it's not about the specific tool. It's about the fact that you know what the tool is doing. This is why I describe it as a bank account because it's not the exact tool. It's the fact that you know you're putting a deposit in the bank. There's 100 ways you can deposit. I walk a lot, nature, music. I mean, I could name 100 of them. Point is, you have to figure out what set of tools bring you more of that ventral connection rather than relying on the tool itself. And that's the thing I think I'm so passionate about going all the way back when you hear nervous system talk, oh, tone your vagus nerve or do this or regulation. It's all good, but people will get over attached to a tool because they think the tool is the thing that's helping them feel better. It's not the tool. It's knowing what the tool helps you accomplish, which is a more regulated nervous system state.
So good. You have just peeled back a whole new layer of my onion of understanding. That's why I brought up tool in the first place. And I wasn't connecting it in that sentence, but like the deposit
Yeah.
word and the bank account is really interesting because again, like when I think of I journal and when I write this stuff down, I even wrote it under tools, reading a book, walking, workout, but I have hit moments of panic when summer's coming and it looks different than school year or holidays coming. Let's talk,
Yeah.
for anybody who that's speaking loud and clear, who you're flowing, or are people who work really well on a schedule because all their
Mhm.
tools are in place. And then we
Mhm.
strip away that
And shift
time
it.
and attention.
Exactly.
So thank you for highlighting that because that happens again, life happens all the time.
Mhm.
And if we can think of it like a bank and with our deposits, I think what you're saying is if we deposit enough, even if we're withdrawing because of time and energy being sucked out, because of
Exactly.
holiday, because of summer vacation, we're still able to do well enough until we get that next glimpse of reprieve. I think.
That's exactly it. And it's oh man, it's one of the most important pieces. Let me just I'll outline the bank account and then I want to reiterate what you just said, which was so important. And that is so when I think of the nervous system bank account, what I'm really talking about is a full bank account is your ventral vagal connected place. Connection, safety, contentment, fill in the blank. Okay. Ventral vagal connection, full bank account.
Mhm.
Overdraft, danger overdraft at the bottom is the dorsal vagal shut down, numb, dissociation. Okay. Ventral at the top, dorsal at the bottom. Sympathetic is going to look different for everybody. And the place at which it switches from, sympathetic to danger overdraft is different for everyone. So that doesn't really matter. We just need to know that connections at the top, overdraft is at the bottom. And everybody who has a bank account knows that overdraft means you got to do something about it. I mean, ideally you're doing something about it, but you get that overdraft email or
Please do something.
notification and you go, oh crap, I gotta put some money in there, right?
Yeah.
So our jobs is to monitor our nervous system bank account throughout the
Hmm.
day. And you said something so brilliant a few minutes ago, which is that I can keep putting deposits in. If I put enough deposits in, doesn't matter what the deposits are, but if I keep putting deposits in, then I can keep withdrawing as well, but still stay up here. The problem is for most people, they don't start putting deposits in until they get that overdraft account, right? Until they get the autoimmune diagnosis, cancer diagnosis, diabetes, whatever. They don't start putting deposits in until they are in overdraft. Now that's, the illness is dramatic, but even on a day to day, we don't start drinking the wine until it's evening time, right? But if you learn how to track your nervous system bank account throughout the day, and more importantly, if you learn how to always be thinking about how can I put a deposit in? How can I put a deposit in? How can I put a deposit in? Deposits can be a walk, a breath, a get up from your chair and move, a breakfast that makes you feel like you have a lot of energy. Well, a trip to the gym, a sauna, not going to the gym, meditating, a massage, a discussion, a connection, coffee. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deposits. All of these little deposits, the little ones build and build and build and help us keep our bank account balance higher so that when the email comes, who withdrawal. When the kids come home from school, who withdrawal. But now we're not going from here to overdraft. We're going from here to here. And we have more capacity to keep putting the deposits in. And so I'm so passionate about speaking about it in those sort of 30,000-foot terms, because like you said, life changes, seasons change, holidays are coming. We cannot be reliant on our routines for okayness. We can't, because the routines change. Our access to gyms and food and the ability to do breath work and meditation, it all changes, it shifts and changes. So we can't be reliant on our routines for okayness. More successful is people being reliant on monitoring their nervous system bank account and putting deposits in where they can. So over the holiday season, maybe you're traveling and you don't have access to the gym. But if you look at it from your nervous system bank account, where can you get a deposit? Is it a conversation with your grandma? Is it a walk? Is it a holiday music playing while you're decorating the tree? Okay, I can have deposits in, I don't know, whatever you're celebrating. I can have deposits in different ways, right? And so I think once people really start understanding it from this perspective, it opens things up for them to be creative about, oh, where can I get a deposit? What does that look like? And it can change from situation to situation and day to day.
Yes, I think you're giving us PhD level of when we hear the word self-care. I can't pour from an empty cup. It's like if we could see this on a spectrum, what we see on social media or this like brief little understanding of it's important to do the self-care. Eliza just took us through again, PhD level of this is why. There's research, there's reasoning. It is not just a fluffy take time for yourself. No,
Yeah.
it's imperative or we are a
Yeah.
sinking ship. And you and I
Yes.
both work like a spectrum of clients, I would say, and I can picture the one woman who is depleted and in the overdraft. I'm loving your words with all of this. Maybe we talk on that for 2 seconds of just like if you're in that totally depleted state and feeling a little hopeless, the baby steps help. I'm hearing we
Yes.
can slowly
Yeah.
deposit.
My my students often pair it back to me. It makes me smile every time they'll say, man, I just hear your voice in my head. I hear your voice in my head, these little isms. I go, okay, good. That's, that's where I want it to be. I want you to hear this little voice in your head. The little things are the big things. That's, the little things are the big things. It is the collection of the little deposits that you don't think are doing anything until you realize it's the little baby steps that you have just, then we can move on to the next piece, which is the sort of brain structures here. The baby steps that have become kind of automatic and just who you are the things that build till one day you look back and go, whoa, it wasn't this huge aha thing that I did that created this monumental change. It was a combination and accumulation of all the little things that you just kept doing, little deposits over and over again. You read the book, felt good. You read it again, felt good. You journaled, felt good. You did it again, felt good, right? And you just kept the baby steps going, which turned into a really big experience, a transformation of the experience that you were having. I don't know if that's a good way of saying that, but yes.
Oh no, it is perfect. And this is what I'm loving about our time together. Okay. I have to wrap because I think everyone's brains are exploding right now.
Yes.
We need to let them heal.
Yes.
So
True.
if you are loving Eliza, I need you to tell us best places to find you, how to keep hearing more, where you seem to show up the most. And then
Yeah.
we'll kind of stay into a part 3 next week.
So elizakingsford.com is my website. A lot of free resources on there to kind of just get to know me a little bit better. And then I tend to show up most on Instagram, although I think you and I have talked about wanting to be more consistent with that. But at Eliza Kingsford on Instagram, I think is the probably most consistent place to find me, and tidbits of some of these things to dive deeper for sure.
Yes. Oh, okay. I'm just going to close this out on little things or big things. That is the best statement. I hope you've quoted that officially to your name, unless that's somebody else's quote. It needs to be yours. Thank you. Thank you so much. And just give our audience a quick little preview of what we're about to talk about in part 3.
Yeah, we'll see you next week for that. So I want to say the final big piece, but man, there's so many big pieces. The final big piece, we're going to talk about sort of the neuroplasticity and brain structures that come as a result of the nervous system that lead to habitual behaviors, which is where we started a couple of weeks ago, that lead to our ability for emotion regulation, which is also where we started. So I'll try to wrap that all in from the perspective of helping people understand why it's been so hard to change, probably because they haven't understood really a lot of these structures that are underneath, with the hope that it's allowing people to take a deep breath and recognize there's nothing wrong with them. It's not about them, and start thinking about ways that change can be more permanent and effective and powerful using some of these tools. So we'll go into neuroplasticity next week.
I'm loving. I'm already leaning in. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see you.